where can it be a projection from except from the very subjectivity that is now experiencing it? So the world must be a manifestation of the subjectivity that is perceiving it. In the same way that when you perceive a dream, you are perceiving only your own mind projected onto a screen for you to view, so you can understand yourself. And the characters in the dream are simply aspects of yourself that are being put on display for you to understand who you are and what you are, and what are the forces that are operating within your own unconscious. But because the dream is created by an intelligence far greater than the ego mind that is observing the dream, you can't understand your own dream. And yet, you have created the dream. But a different part of you created it than is observing it. The one observing the dream, having the dream, waking up and saying, wow, I had an incredible dream, is not the part of you that created the dream for you to have. That's the difference between the ego and the Atman. The Atman is infinitely more intelligent than the ego, and therefore it can create a dream that you do not understand, and yet can be explained in a way that you go, of course, that's what it means, and you have insight as to your own unconscious. And that insight comes from the superconscious. So we have direct knowledge that there is a superconscious. That is given to us by the fact of dreaming. And the fact that we can interpret those dreams and realize that there is a higher intelligence than the one I am operating with while I'm normally awake. And I realize that I'm more intelligent when I'm asleep than when I'm awake. Now that should be very humbling in itself. But that intelligence that we're aware of only when we're asleep is also present when we're awake, but we block it. We block it by being in these ego minds that are chattering so much they can't listen to the supreme intelligence that's trying to get through to us. If we were willing to listen, we wouldn't need to come to a spiritual community to have somebody ram this down our throats. We would get this on our own in meditation. Okay? But someone has to show you this for you to get it, that your own mind is blocking the fact that you are the supreme intelligence. When we start every meditation, one of the things we declare is Shiva Hum. That means we are all Shiva. We are the supreme intelligence. We are collectively the dreamer of this dream. Om Namo Shivaya means I surrender to the source, the great dreamer of this dream. And my intention is to become one again with that dreamer who has dreamed me up as if I am separate from the dreamer. But I recognize that that is the very illusion that I must awaken from. So we become Buddhas, which means awaken to the fact that we have only dreamed up our own alienation from our real being, in order to be able to appreciate the God self as an other. Because God, being whole, being all there is, has no mirror to see itself, herself, himself. Right? No mirror. And so this world provides a mirror of the infinite potentiality that is God consciousness. But all of this infinite beauty of nature and of intelligence in all of its potential and actual forms is nothing but the projection of the self that each one of us is here and now at this moment. And so if you will sit with that knowledge that you are that, tattvamasi, that's the basic over and over again reiterated claim of the yogis. You are this very universe that you are perceiving, because it is nothing but a projection, a dream of the infinitely powerful, almighty dreamer that is God. And if you'll silence the ego mind that is caught in its own projections and bring all of that energy of mind back to the source and be completely one-pointed, you will break through into the realm of the dreamer of the dream and get out of the dream. Then you are a Buddha. And if you'll stay out of the dream and remain in that transcendent state, then you are truly an avatar and you will reach the Samyak Sambodhi state. That is that state of perfection that no longer falls into the illusion at all of being a creation of the Creator, but you remain always in the consciousness of the Creator self. And that consciousness is filled with wisdom, it's filled with love, with joy, completely at peace with all beings. There's no conflict, no war. All of that is simply an appearance, an illusion, and one recognizes the underlying oneness of all that is. And so to liberate ourselves from this illusion is simply refusing to take the illusion for reality. Don't mistake it. Because once you fall into the illusion that you're living in a dangerous world, you're never going to put your defenses down. And if you believe that the real danger, the biggest danger, comes from other human beings attacking you, well, you're never going to open your heart to loving other human beings. It wouldn't make sense to do that. You can pretend to do that, but you don't really do it. It's interesting, we were talking the other day about how ashrams tend to use the name Madhuban very often. Madhuban means the forest of honey. We're going to be naming the area where the honeybees are with that name. Why? Because, of course, the honey, the sweetness of divine love, is behind that. But, very interestingly, in the Hindu scriptures, Madhu is also the name of a demon that Krishna has to kill. Now, why would they give the demon the name sweetness? It's very interesting, no? Because there is a false kind of sweetness, the sweet molasses that we talk about, that has an ulterior agenda, that isn't always sweet, but it can pretend to be sweet, and it can seduce you by its sweetness and its attractiveness into putting your guard down, and then you get stabbed, right? This is the way that is a very popular method of functioning for many egos. Okay? So, I'm not saying that anyone here would fall into that category, but the sweet molasses strategy is a strategy. It is not true sweetness. But everyone behind their strategy, whether it's Kali or sweet molasses or whatever, has the sweetness of God consciousness. But no ego has real sweetness in it, because it's always defended against the lack of sweetness in a world of other egos who are armed like armadillos and porcupines and all of those creatures of nature that reflect back our own ego defenses to us. And we dare not put the guard down because of fear of being hurt. But once we recognize that this world that we're so afraid of is only our own dream, we cannot be hurt. We become immune. Because the only hurts that would come to us would be hurts that we projected out into the world and are coming back to us from the world of our own imagining. And that's the meaning of all of the spiritual metaphors of crucifixion and of martyrdom, etc. It's the recognition that nothing can really hurt you. Once you have ascended into God consciousness, you can make the physical organism into a sacrifice, and it only exalts your consciousness all the more. It brings the manifestation of freedom into this physical realm. Don't be afraid to have the courage to open your heart, because if you don't need anything to come back to you in return, and if there's no ego for the arrows that are going to come to stick to, they will pass right through you anyway without doing you any harm. It's only if there is an ego that still wants to be loved by other creatures in this illusory world that you become a prey, or you become open to being hurt. But if you don't want anything back, if you accept the world on its own terms and recognize it as an illusion that cannot give you anything back, nor do you need anything from it. You are here to be a giver, to help it to become more beautiful, but you don't need anything from it. And you have no obligations to it, except your obligation is to the source, to serving God and bringing truth into this world of lies and illusions and false love. And to refuse to cripple yourself by living as the illusory being that others are demanding you to be. No, we need the freedom to live in truth with loyalty only to the source, and to create a community that has loyalty only to the source. And that is what enables harmony to be present among us. Because in a true spiritual community, we come in as free beings and we retain our freedom. But the highest level of freedom is gained by the highest level of surrender to the source. Freedom is not an attribute of the ego. It cannot be. The ego is determined by all of those forces. Freedom comes from dissolving the ego, through surrendering it. So, in the modern world, in this illusion, you're trained to want freedom for the ego, to get whatever it wants. What we really need, however, is freedom from the ego. And it is only a spiritual community like this that's operating on the basis of truth and of the non-egoic oneness that will give you an opportunity to be in a place where you have freedom from the ego. And you are supported in achieving and maintaining that freedom. But to the ego mind itself, that doesn't make sense. Right? It wants freedom to do what it wants and to enjoy what it wants and to not pay attention to anyone else's needs and not serve. It wants to be in that narcissistic point of complete dishonoring of this beautiful world that is the manifestation of God, and just get what it wants for itself, or for a few people, for its biological family, or a very small circle of people that it cares about, and then to hell with everyone else, including oneself, one's real self. So the ego operates against its own interests, because that attitude creates suffering. That's what causes karma. That's what causes sickness. It's when your heart is not open to God that one gets heart attacks and other things. And all of the symptoms that we know of psychosomatic illness come from ego consciousness closing down its own capacity for love. So we have to open not only the hand of thought, but the heart of love to free ourselves from suffering. And we can only do that when we know that this world is an illusion projected by the collective consciousness, and we are the source of that. We are not at the mercy of it. We are no longer in a perilous state. You know, the word experience, the perience comes from the word peril. It's dangerous out there. It's even dangerous in there, in your own dreams, because they'll produce nightmares if you haven't dissolved the ego and its unconscious demons. It's only in the Sumerians that there's no longer peril. The P drops out. No peril, no dangers. It's all goodness. It is the sum of all goodness in the universe and beyond the universe. And sum in Latin also means I am. So once you recognize what you are and abide in the I am, then everything becomes goodness again. the perfection of this cosmic dream becomes known.